So in response to my previous video about smoothing with a fall-off, William Vaughan asked me a question on the Foundry's forum about the difference with the regular smooth tool and airbrush fall-off and the Sculpt smooth tool. So when you go to your upper left corner, you have your Sculpt brushes, or alternatively you could press F3 on your keyboard and you get your Sculpt palette. So over here you have your smooth tool. Now I have a mesh over here. I'm going to first duplicate it, hide the original one, and go to component mode. So when I activate the Sculpt smooth brush, now I can, by right clicking, resize it, and when I click and paint on the tablet, I'm working with a pen right now. Then I can smooth with tablet pressure. So the harder I press, the more the offset amount will be taken into account. So that's the regular smooth. If I hold down the control key, then I will smooth with preserve volume. So vertices will be smoothed out, but the overall volume will be retained. And I believe that for retaining volume, the Sculpt Smooth brush is better than the regular brush. So let's compare that. Go to item mode, hide this one, Control D to duplicate that one, go to component mode, and now press Shift S and preserve volume. Iterations, for instance, set it to 50 and click in the viewport. Click again, and it does update, but maybe not very visible in the viewport. I've set my iterations to 150 right now. Click in the viewport. So you see, it does smooth out a little bit, but it's not as pretty as with the Sculpt Smooth. Well, yeah, that backside was regular smooth, but you see here I smoothed it with the smooth tool and the control key, and it nicely retains those edges. Whereas with the regular smooth and preserve volume, you see up here the sharpness of those outer edges are not as well preserved. So for some tasks, the regular smooth tool will be better than the Sculpt smooth tool, and vice versa. The thing that I want to draw your attention to is the following. So I'm going to first, in item mode again, duplicate that original, make that one visible. With the regular smooth tool, I'm going to press Ctrl D to reset it. Set my iterations, for instance, to 50. Now I can press apply, or I can click in the viewport. And there is a difference. When I press apply, these settings are applied. But now when I adjust the iterations, for instance to 500, now my mesh is not being re-evaluated. I have to press apply again to apply those iterations. So apply. I'm going to press Ctrl Z to undo to see the difference with clicking in the viewport. So now I'm going to click in the viewport and it smooths with iterations 50, but now if I adjust the iterations and set it to 500, now it does have an effect on my last stroke or click in the viewport. So when you press apply, you cannot adjust the iterations afterwards. When you press apply and you adjust the iterations, that will be a setting for the next iteration, if you will. But when you click in the viewport and then adjust your settings, it will be for the iteration that you previously had done. So Control Z to undo, Shift S. When my iterations are set to, for instance, 20, press apply. It's smooth, and I cannot edit that anymore. I have to press Control Z if I want to undo, because when I set it now to 500 and press enter, you see it does not smooth. But I can click in the viewport now, click, and if I say no, it's too much, and since I've now clicked in the viewport instead of pressing apply, I can say no, I want only 20, and you see I can edit my last smooth operation, if you will. So that is an important difference also with the Sculpt Smooth. That is something you can not do with Sculpt Smooth. With Sculpt Smooth you have to undo. So when I select this one, now if I adjust my offset amount to 100, it does not change my last smoothing. It's like pressing apply with the regular smooth tool. So another important difference between the Sculpt Smooth and the regular smooth tool. And another important fact is background constraints, or an important matter that I want to discuss is background constraints. So I'm going to duplicate that one. I don't need those other meshes anymore. Yes, going to press N for a new mesh layer. Going to go to my retopology, Shift A, and activate the topology pen tool. Control click to create a polygon, and then Shift right mouse button click, middle mouse button click to add some spans. I'm going to quickly create a bit of geometry on top of this to test out the smooth tool. Maybe just like that. So in the previous video I've shown you that when you activate the smooth tool with an airbrush fall off and then activate background constraint and set it to point, that now I can right click and drag to adjust my airbrush fall off, and my iterations are set to 20. So again I can press apply if I want to, but I have my airbrush fall off, so that won't work right now. With the airbrush fall off you actually need to interactively paint like that. And just like with clicking in the viewport, if I want to have a higher strength, then I can adjust the last operation. So the iteration set, for instance, to 500 to see the difference, and you see it updates. If I say no, that's too much, 200, and again it updates, no, again too much, 20, okay. Now when I click and drag again over another portion, now that becomes my active smoothing, if you will. So iterations set to 500, too much. So an important difference with the regular smooth or with the Sculpt Smooth is that I can adjust my iterations if I've clicked in a viewport, or as shown here, used the smooth tool with an airbrush fall off. And the difference with the smooth sculpt is that it does not work well with constraint to background. So I've activated the smooth sculpt tool now. You see that in my tool properties my geometry constraint is point. So I have a constraint to the background, and I'm going to try and smooth out, but you see nothing happens. I haven't really, oh, and I have my airbrush fall off. I should turn that off. So smooth sculpt without a fall off. But again, only the borders seem to, if I click it double-sided, and you have in the Sculpt palette a background constraint button. If I click that, It doesn't seem to change anything. I have searched the documentation about that button, but I can't find any information about it. If you're watching this video and you know what this background constraint button actually does, I have no clue, because it doesn't seem to work. So that is another difference, as far as I know, between the Sculpt Smooth brush and the regular Smooth, is that the regular Smooth works very well with background constraints, point, and that the Sculpt Smooth brush does not work that well with background constraint. Actually, the Sculpt tools don't work with background constraint point very well at all. I believe that just the push tool can be used if you set the background constraint to vector. And nothing is happening here right now, but that's because, of course, my vertices are on the surface. So if I activate my element move tool pressing the T key, set my background constraint off. But this is actually not about smoothing anymore. So push background constraint to vector. Now you see the push tool operates, and it pushes the vertices from the inside to the background mesh. But anyway, with smoothing, background constraint does not work in my experience. So you see, like that. So that's why I always use the regular smooth with point background constraint with an airbrush fall off. I adjust my radius, and this works beautifully with background constraint to smooth out. And I press the T key to adjust components the way I want them. So T key for the element move tool, and again Shift S. Oh, and I clicked, so I should set my airbrush fall off back on. Action center off. And oh, I have still in transform tool, so Shift S. Okay. So those are a bit of the differences that you have between the Sculpt Smooth and the regular Smooth tool. So when I go back to my model tab, if you want to quickly smooth out, then the Smooth Sculpt is actually very, and I should turn off my airbrush fall off, very handy to smooth out geometry. Holding the control key preserves volume. Or you could simply use the regular smooth with an airbrush fall off. And now when you paint, you have to click again to apply another iterations. So the iterations are important now. But the advantage now is that if I have too much of smoothing, I can say or adjust the iterations, and you see it updates after the fact. Without airbrush fall off to none, if I activate the smooth tool, and I don't need my background constraint now, if I press apply, 5000 is a bit much, apply, now I cannot adjust the iterations. So Control Z, if I click in the viewport, then it applies it, but now I can adjust like that. Oh, and another thing that I wanted to point out to you is that when doing retopology with background constraints, so I'm going to make my mesh active again, hide that one, go back to my topology layout. So earlier I've shown you that the Sculpt Smooth brush does not operate very well with background constraint. So turn on my background constraint. Doesn't really do much. Anyway, I can turn background constraint off. And now sculpt with holding the control key to preserve volume. Now I am smoothing, but be aware that my vertices are now not being retained to the background. See, they penetrate the background now, but it does smooth out the faces beautifully. Now I'm going to drop the smooth sculpt brush and activate my regular smooth brush and press Ctrl D to reset everything. I'm going to set my strength to, for instance, 0.01, and now turn on my background constraint. And now with background constraint on and with the regular smooth tool, and I have no fall off, just regular smooth tool, click apply. Now you see the vertices jump to the surface. So again, background constraint off, smooth sculpt the brush, Control to preserve volume, to smooth out my polygons, like that, and to make sure that some of the vertices are off the geometry. I'm going to activate the element move tool and push them in and out a bit, so that you are certain that some of the vertices are inside of the geometry. Again, activate background constraint, press Shift S for my smooth tool, and with a very low strength and just one iteration, click apply or click in the viewport. And now my vertices jump to the nearest point of my background. So when doing retopology, you can use the smooth sculpt brush this way, and my background constraint is on, so I'm turning it off. So you see, and I have my offset amount set to 100. I'm going to set it to 5. Hold the control key to smooth out. Okay. Just nicely smooth it out like that. And to make sure that my vertices now go back or are on the background geometry, I can press Shift S for the smooth tool, turn on background constraint, and with low strength and iterations like earlier, shown earlier, click apply, and that makes the vertices jump to the background. So that's another way that you could use with retopology the smooth sculpt brush.